Welcome, everyone, to the Pool Nation Live podcast. I am your host, Edgar De Jesus, and yes, I am the reigning champion of Marco Polo, along with John JJ Flawless, the fastest knitter in the West, and the famous Zach, the pool boy Nicholas. Today, we're talking to Dallas from the FSPA and John with SunSmart Engineering, and we are going to do some great deep dives today. But before we do that, I want to welcome everyone to our live podcast, a podcast where it's all pool talk, and we ain't talking about netting and jetting or splashing and dashing. We're talking about becoming a nation of pool pros. And yes, we will talk about the latest products, trends, and training in the pool industry. But before we get started today, I want to thank our visionary partners for this podcast, the SPPA, Blu-ray XL, Aquastar Pool Products, Natural Chemistry, Raypack, Heritage Pool Supply, Hayward Pool Products, Poolside Tech, Pool Brain, and U.S. Motors. We want to thank them for their continued support. Mr. Flawless, good morning.
Good morning. I'm a little thrown off because our boy Zach isn't here today.
And I'm in studio all by myself, so this is just weird.
I was just thinking to myself while you were doing the introduction and going through our normal cadence, I'm like, wow, this is a little bit off here because I'm going to be the first one talking. And I always go after Zach.
Yep.
I'll be able to adapt and change. And I think I'm going to be able to pull it together and make my good morning work today.
Interchannel your Zach.
Yeah, I'm going to channel my inner Zach. Look, hey, excited actually about this podcast. I think this is some really good information that is going to be discussed for each and every one of our listeners and people. There's a lot of work that gets done behind the scenes that goes unseen, or people don't really understand the hard work and dedication and effort that takes place from people out there fighting the good fight for us pool pros out in the field, whether it's the service side of it, distribution, or whether it's building. And today we're going to be talking about a very important subject. And one of our driving forces here is obviously safety and understanding the risks involved in it and creating a safer environment for us and for the clients that we serve. I'm pretty stoked that we've had the opportunity to team up with you guys so that we can get this message out and talk a little bit about what took place and how it affects us and some of your guys' findings. So thanks for taking the trip out to Dallas. Look forward to the rest of the podcast.
So here's the thing, John. See, even you're confused. It's like Dallas is here, which we're going to talk to next. And then we're talking to Dallas and John. You have that confused look. You thought that Dallas is in Dallas, right?
Oh, I thought Dallas was in Dallas.
See, Dallas, I told
John.
You.
No.
Dallas, good morning.
You got to forgive me. Look, you got to forgive me. I have a defense mechanism inside me where I automatically just like have 95% of the stuff that Edgar says. I just goes in one ear, out the other. And I remember him clearly saying earlier that he's alone in the studio. And if I would have put
but I'm talking together, to Dallas.
I would have figured that out.
Dallas is in Dallas.
Thank you for being Dallas.
Yeah, I know, right? We should have called Dallas something different.
Now, I'm coming to you from Florida, which is in its second stage of summer, that's the stage of summer where you step outside and you can feel like you're in a nice warm sauna. Getting a little too close to the heating element.
We've been out to Dallas many times. Yeah. We've been out to, there we go again. We've been out to Florida many times. And I can tell you, when we take that step off that plane, it's like,
it's brutal.
Just want to get back out and go back in the plane, go take me home.
Yeah.
I don't know how you guys can deal with it out there.
Yeah, we're in stage 2 of stage 3 of summer. And the next one is August, which I don't know how to describe that one yet, but I just know August. By the end of July, summer wasn't that bad, but August always just knocks me on my butt every year.
Yeah, it's funny, Dallas, because I was just talking about that. I just said, man, we've had a light summer out here, but August is always our scorching. And then today, 100 degrees. I'm like, I spoke just a little too soon about that. So
Florida is such a different heat because I grew up in California, the Valley, and you're talking, it's 105. 16 days in a row. That's fine. That's one thing. And then Florida here, it's 98 degrees, but the humidity I've adjusted mostly, but it's still just, you got to accept it's going to be damp for a few months of the year.
You take a shower and you need another shower after you take a shower.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's terrible. Hey, John, how you doing? We've left John over there in his own little world. How you doing?
I'm doing great. Glad to be here.
No problem. Now, John, are you out in Florida too?
I am. I'm in Fort Myers. Which is south of Tampa on the Gulf Coast.
South of Tampa. Okay. Now I have a little bit of an idea. But anyways, guys, I want to thank you guys for reaching out. We're really excited to be able to talk about this today. Like John was saying, obviously safety is a big thing, but I think this is one of the things that, especially as pool pros, we talk about, but we might not always understand because we don't have the visual of how it works, but how important it is, right? I mean, we're talking about something that can cost people their lives if it's not done. So we're excited to talk about that. Let me jump in here and talk about some housekeeping notes and we'll get started. Hey, everybody, we jump into the Pool Nation nomination night, which is going to be Wednesday, August 20th. And that's going to be on our Instagram Live. We're going to be streaming live and opening up all the nominations for all the different categories for the Pool Nation Awards. And then from there, we go straight into the Pool Nation Women's Summit, which is August 21st and 22nd at Heritage Headquarters in McKinney, Texas. And by the way, Dallas, Lindsay, and Nikki are both going to be out here. So we're excited about that.
Oh, excellent. Yeah.
And then from there, we go straight into the PSP Expo. So we have the $10,000 Pool Pro Challenge, which is going to be October 22nd at the PSP Expo. And then that Thursday night, we do the Pool Nation Awards from 6 to 9. And then we do the HASA After Party from 10 to midnight. And then from there, we roll right into the Pool Nation Conference, which is going to be October 24th and 25th at the PSP Expo. Any information, guys and girls, go out to poolnation.com or reach out. We are looking forward to being able to connect with everybody out there and do what we do. All right, people, let's get this party started because I want to talk about this. Dallas, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do?
Yeah, thank you. I am the Chief Government Relations Officer for the Florida Swimming Pool Association and the Pool Industry Council. Florida Swimming Pool Association is the trade association for the pool industry in the state of Florida. We represent service professionals, contractors, manufacturers, distributors, retailers. If it's part of the pool industry, they can be our members. We have 850 members strong, 16 chapters around the state. And we do primarily advocacy and education for the pool industry. That's my primary job as a liaison with the state government, the governor's office, the legislature, regulators, and local governments. The Pool Industry Council is a 501c4 nonprofit focused on education and research for the pool industry and for consumers, to be able to educate consumers on the pool industry and educate the pool industry on ourselves and what we do and how we do things and the best way to do things. So I think that kind of leads into what we're here to talk about today. And thanks for having us.
No problem. Glad to have you guys. So, John, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
I'm a licensed professional engineer in Florida and several other states with over a decade of experience in swimming pools, renewable energy, and several other sectors. And I'm also the vice president of engineering at SunSmart Engineering. SunSmart Engineering is a full-service engineering firm working in the swimming pool, solar, roofing, and several other trades to provide engineering services in Florida and throughout the United States.
That's awesome. Today, guys, we want to talk about, obviously, the Pool Industry Council and the landmark study on swimming pool and equipotential bonding. And so let's kind of deep dive. And can you guys tell us exactly what that is and why it's so important in the swimming pool industry?
John, I'll let you do that one as the technical expert here.
Sure. Equipotential bonding is a safety system that connects all of the metal components and electrical equipment in and around the swimming pool area together with a wire. That ensures that everything stays at the same voltage.
Okay. For listeners who might not be very familiar with bonding, and I know a lot of times people sometimes confuse bonding and grounding, how does it really, or why is bonding so important, and how does it keep pools and swimmers safe?
Yeah, bonding is actually electrically keeping the group of components that you want to bond together at the same level, which is different than grounding. So we're trying to keep everything electrically at the same level. So if there's any stray voltage that occurs either within the pool or external to the pool that comes into the pool area, that electricity could electrify certain parts of the pool environment. If those parts are at different voltages, electricity could flow through a person who touches two of them at once, which is what causes a shock if a shock occurs. So in this case, if the pool water is at a different voltage than, say, the railing on the deck, and the person in the water touches that railing and they're at two different voltages, that's when you have an issue. So you want the voltages to all be at the same level relative to the person in the pool.
So bonding, so as John's mentioned, like bonding functions as that protective system. So in a situation where you got a stray voltage that electrified the pool system, where it's a safety system to make sure that everything does stay at the same potential, so you're going to avoid those shocks and electrocutions.
And so obviously we're talking about the swimmer getting into the pool and getting shocked. And unfortunately, we've heard some of those stories in the past, right, where people pass away because they get into the pool and it's not bonded. So can you guys explain a little bit of the two main bonding methods that are out there?
Yeah, when we're talking about this subject specifically, and what we'll talk about a little bit later in the study, was actually bonding of the perimeter surface surrounding the pool. pool. So the pool equipment and the water itself are all bonded together with a conductor. But then you also want to make sure you bond the perimeter surface, which is defined as 3 feet from the water's edge around the entire perimeter of the pool. You want to bond that earth or pavers or concrete decking to the pool water and the rest of the equipment. So there's two main methods that are discussed in the National Electric Code. And like I said, both of these methods are for really bonding the perimeter surface to the rest of the pool. Both methods go around the perimeter of the pool and are connected with copper conductors. One is a single wire. So you run a number 8 bare copper wire around the whole perimeter of the pool underneath the ground. And that's connected, like I said, with copper conductors to the rest of the pool. And the other method is using a copper grid, which is a grid made up of number 8 copper wire. So if you imagine laying copper wire out at 12-inch squares and welding it in place, you form this mesh and you run that around the pool. That's the other main method to do the same thing.
So what's the difference between the two, and why are there two different ways of doing it, and why do they exist?
Over the years, for the last nearly 2 decades, both methods have been in the electrical code as acceptable. And the theory behind the copper grid, I believe, is that it provides an elevated level of mitigating any equipotential voltage that exists. The number 8 copper wire method, the single copper wire, was put into the code as an alternative method to basically meet the minimum requirements of bonding the perimeter surface of the pool.
So let me ask you this. And again, this is the part that I like to get into a little bit. So I've never seen it, right? I'm not in the pool building side. We're more of the service side. So how does that single copper wire actually get installed? So if I'm a pool builder, I'm out. Where does it go? What does it get connected to? What does that look like?
It gets run around the perimeter of the pool while the pool's under construction. It's going to be in the earth, and then it's going to be covered up by soil and then by whatever decking you have on top of that. But in a concrete pool with rebar, you're going to have rebar that's sticking out of the concrete exposed into the earth. And it's going to be, that wire is going to be clamped on to those rebar pigtails on 4 sides of the pool. And that's what kind of electrically bonds that. Same thing with the copper grid. The copper grid is going to be run around the pool in the same way in the ground, and it's going to be connected on 4 sides. If you have a non-conductive pool, like fiberglass, vinyl liner, something that doesn't have any conductive surface in it, no steel in the shell, you have to bond the water itself with a water bonding plate and then wire that down to that perimeter bonding ring or grid, whatever you have installed. It's going to be installed before you put the deck on around that pool.
So if you have the single wire and you're going into the 4 corners, right, of that pool, then where does the rest of that wire go to, and what else does it connect to?
So the rest of it gets connected to all of the other metal in and around the pool. So if there's a screen enclosure that's within 5 feet of the water, that gets bonded to the system, that gets connected with the wire back to the system. If you have any metal in the pool, if you have a metallic light niche, which is more of an older school thing, nowadays they're mostly plastic, any kind of metal railings, metal ladders, if you've got any kind of bronze scuppers or water features, anything metallic that can conduct electricity gets connected to this system. And it runs all the way back to the equipment pad where it gets bonded in with that same wire to the pump and the heater and anything else that's going to be in contact with the water and be either electrified or otherwise conductive.
Now, you said screening enclosure within, what was it, 3 feet?
5 feet of the water's edge.
So what if there's a metal fence within that 5 feet? It's just anything that's metal within that 5 feet?
Yeah.
Okay.
Anything, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, anything that's conductive. And I think it's important to point out too, that the bonding system is, we are connecting everything together, but itself does not carry a hot charge. It doesn't carry any electricity. It's not a hot system. It's a system there to mitigate if there is a voltage that gets into the system and something that does carry a current.
Gotcha. That makes sense. I remember somebody asking me, and all of a sudden, guys, I'm thinking that I was set up, John Flawless. I went to do a quote for a pool, and this is when I started very early in the industry. And I got there to be quoted for service, and then all of a sudden they had this heater that was, I don't know, 1923. Obviously, I'm exaggerating to make my point. It was like this god-awful heater that just, and all of a sudden they're like, oh, we need to replace the heater. And I'm like, at that point, I didn't do anything, but I was working with Rod. And I'm like, oh, I'll have to get Rod. He's a contractor. He can come out and tell you about it. And he's all, the guy said something specifically, guys, about the fence being so close to the pool. And it went over my head at the time because I was like, I'm just a service guy. I'm not, and he was drilling me down about how close the metal fence was to the pool. So I'm assuming, obviously, he was kind of referring to it being grounded to it.
Yeah, I'm sure it's anything that you can touch by hand while you're still in the pool or around the pool that you can get, I think is why that's in effect. So I have a question.
Yeah.
We talk about the bonding that runs everywhere throughout the shell, the structure, anything metal within 5 feet of the pool. And then it runs all the way to the equipment pad. The equipment pad, everything that has any metal components to it is also bonded, correct? And that even includes panels that are on the wall that doesn't have water that's running through it, right? Like, for instance, an automation can, or let's say a power center for a salt cell. All that stuff needs to be bonded as well and connected, even though it's not close to the water or touching the water.
Right. So those things are bonded to it by virtue of the ground wire that runs from those panels. So if you've got a lighting transformer, junction box, or an automation panel, or the pool pump, the power circuit that comes from those breakers that goes down is going to carry a grounding conductor. And the grounding conductor is going to double as the means to bond it. So it inherently gets bonded to the rest of the equipment. That's exactly right.
Okay. And are there any advantages or disadvantages to each method in terms of installation cost or long-term durability between the single copper wire or the grid?
So both are installed in a similar way. Obviously, the copper grid is going to be more material, which is going to be more cost. And because of the size of the copper grid, it takes a little bit more skill to get set in place. Both are, like I said, code compliant options at this point. They're both manufactured from the same number 8 copper wire. It's just that the grid has more of that copper. So in terms of longevity, they'll last in the ground as long as the other one would.
Okay. And do builders or inspectors prefer one over the other, or is it really just about local code?
Yeah, go ahead, Dallas.
I can speak to that. As we're gearing up for these studies too, start asking these questions, and just, I don't have an official data point for this, but just anecdotally from the builders I've talked to, the majority, I would almost say to the 99% of builders, at least in Florida, are using single wire. From their perspective, there has not been a demonstrated need in most cases to go to the grid.
Let me ask you this. So obviously, if you have the single wire and you're having to make the points at every touch, what do you guys see in Florida? Do you guys, from what I hear, a lot of the pools in Florida are probably kind of like California, where they've been there for a while. If you have that single wire, is there any worries at any point that any of those points might be disconnected?
There's always a chance over the years, if it's an older pool, at any kind of renovation that may have occurred, or even just adding things to the area around the pool. If somebody's not putting their shovel in the right place, you could break that connection. Now, that's probably going to more likely occur with the wiring that runs from the pool and deck itself to the equipment pad, which in either case is going to be the same thing, whether it's a copper grid or copper wire. Getting and damaging the actual perimeter bond around the pool, if it exists. If it's old enough, there is no perimeter bond. If it's more than 25 years old, there probably isn't anything in the ground at all. That's going to be harder to damage because it's going to be right next to your pool and underneath your deck normally. So unless you're completely changing your deck out, you're probably not going to touch that. But I have heard of the actual home run wire going from the pool back to the equipment being severed if somebody's putting sprinklers in or doing any kind of underground work.
Yeah, that makes sense. Now, let me ask you guys, obviously we're going to talk a little bit about the Pool Industry Council, but why did you guys decide to do this study now, and what made it necessary? And then was there anybody else in the industry that partnered with you guys on this study?
Yeah, so the Pool Industry Council, like I said before, their purpose really is, one of the purposes is research and education for the pool industry about what the pool industry does. And from the macro perspective, there's never been a study done like this thoroughly on the issue of equipotential bonding. What really pushed it to a head, though, was the decision made by the National Fire Prevention Association for the National Electric Code. In 2023, there was a TIA, or tentative interim amendment, to the National Electric Code 2023 that, if adopted into the 2026 NEC, would eliminate the single wire option as a available bonding method. And given that there has not been before this study such a thorough investigation into the effectiveness of equipotential bonding methods, and that now we have a national electric code, which is used by so many states, including Florida, as our base electrical code, is going to eliminate an option that's been used safely in Florida for over 2 decades. The Pool Industry Council said we need to fund and study this issue. And yes, we did have partners on this. The Pool and Hot Tub Alliance provided technical assistance in helping design the study and helping bring this together, but also monetary assistance in helping fund the study. So we're really grateful to the Pool and Hot Tub Alliance for partnering with the Pool Industry Council on that to study this important issue.
I want to take it back just a couple steps, what John was talking about before. We'll get back to the study because as I get older, these questions come up and I forget. And if I don't ask them now, then I'll forget by the end of the podcast. So forgive me on this.
Oh, you're starting to admit the age lately, John. There's been a couple of times.
Edgar, I wake up now. I've just fully accepted it, my friend. I'm rolling with it and I've accepted it. So I'm going to embrace who I am. I'm no longer going to resist a change.
If you forget enough, it's a new day every day, man.
Right, exactly. Right.
It's a new world. It's a new world every day.
Amen.
That's brother. A great way to look at it.
Yeah.
Amen. So look, what I want to ask a couple questions, and I think you brought up some points that apply to everyday life for a pool professional when they're in the backyard, or at some point they come across this during their journey as a service provider. And some of these questions, there's not really, or there's some misconception, or there's lack of training when it comes down to it. But for instance, you were talking about, we know that bonding is extremely important, right? And it saves lives and it needs to take place. But when you were talking about instances where sometimes those lines can be severed, how do you go about repairing that? Or how does a technician or a pool guy or gal, when they're in the backyard, know that the bond has been severed unless someone told them about it, or unless they did it themselves, or if they're taking over a new account like we do and we go through checklists to make sure that the equipment's up to par, that bonding, that electrical safe, that the water safe, and all those things. How does a technician identify something like that, or test for something like that, or do in those types of situations?
So first would be how to verify that you've got a good connection between the equipment and the pool and everything else that should be present in that bonding system. The first recommendation would be to take a multimeter that has 2 probes, and you can measure continuities. You can measure the resistance between 2 points in the bonding system. If everything, when you're measuring continuity, you should get an audible tone out of your meter that says we're getting a good connection here. I would start at the equipment pad and go from the service panel or automation system, wherever your equipment is wired in with a breaker, and then just go between that and the pump, and that and the heater, maybe the pump and the lighting transformer grounding, and then work your way back to the pool itself. So when you measure between any 2 points that are supposed to be in this bonding system, you should have continuity. So your meter should be telling you you've got continuity there. And if you don't, you're not getting that reading that you should be getting, then you've got an issue somewhere. And like I said, a lot of times it might be in the ground and it might be a little bit harder to find.
So how would you test a shell?
The shell is tougher to test. You're not going to really have any exposed metal directly in the shell, except for underneath the ground, underneath your decking. The closest you could get to testing the shell would be to test the water itself, because the water should be bonded to that shell as well. And that's really the important thing. So actually getting a probe, and you don't have to put the whole probe in the water, but you could connect the probe to a piece of wire and then put the wire in the water, and it'll basically work as an extension of that probe. You should have a continuous bond. That's where the continuity term comes from the water all the way back to the equipment.
Perfect. And then one more follow-up question. What happens you were saying that some homes that are older that didn't have these codes or regulations, or the builders, they didn't supply a bond, or there's missing bond. Is there a way to retrofit it or to bond the equipment if one isn't there? Like, for instance, I've seen where electricians go out there and drive in a grounding stake into the ground and then bond everything to it. We've walked homes where they'll have gas lines where that's bonded to the equipment. Is there a proper way of doing it, or is there a way to retrofit it, a pool that doesn't currently have a bond?
So what we're talking about today specifically is the perimeter bond. That was what I was referring to on older pools. They don't have that perimeter bond. They still should have equipment bonding and pool bonding itself. So there should be, and always has been, a requirement to bond all the equipment together. It's really what could be missing is that perimeter bond that actually goes around the pool, that's actually trying to connect the ground itself, the earth itself,
Sure.
to the pool. In that case, if you don't have that present and you are getting some sort of issue, the only way to mitigate that is unfortunately excavate down and set it into the ground itself.
I can speak to how that's been handled, because one of the provisions we have in the Florida building code, in our existing building code, is when you're doing a renovation on a pool and your renovation is going to affect one of the bonded parts. So if you're just doing a renovation where you're just doing the finish and tile, you're not doing anything with the deck, you're not doing anything with handrails, anything like that, you wouldn't necessarily implicate that section of the code. But let's say you're putting the deck down, the deck being a bonded part, even like a layover deck, you're going to add 2 inches to that deck. Adding that 2 inches could take the bond wire out of its depth range, which is 4 to 6 inches, and you'd be below the grade. So at that point, it would be, if you're under a permit for that, a building official could ask you to confirm the bonding. Now, if there's no bonding in place, now you're going to have to come up with a plan to do that. Generally speaking, under our current system where single wire is allowed, it does add some cost to it, but it's minimally intrusive. You can take out a small section of deck around the pool to be able to place that perimeter bond in at the proper level, seal everything back up, and then bond everything and confirm the bonding that way. If you were to do it with a copper grid, it would require full excavation of any perimeter decking. It would have to just completely be ripped out and then redone to do that. The other thing I want to add too is that while we're talking about failures of bonding, they're exceedingly rare as far as the system itself having problems with it. You'll talk to contractors and maybe they'll see 1 or 2 in a career. I point to also like the Consumer Product Safety Commission. They track electrical incidents and shock incidents in pools. And since 2009, there's been 72 shock incidents reported to the CPSC in swimming pools throughout the country. And you only had one of the incidences reference bonding, and that was to say that it didn't exist at all. So it was a very old pool, and it was probably built out of code even then because there was no bonding to speak of. Most of the time, we're not seeing a lot of reported cases where there's been a bonding failure. It's something that is rare, but it can be checked for and should be checked for.
Well, that makes sense. And I get that. It kind of justifies and makes complete sense to me now, because you kind of look at it, you go, okay, look, you have a study here and they're saying, hey, look, you got to get more, put a grid in. I can see their perspective saying that, hey, if you have a grid there, if there is a failure point, then you have multiple connections, and that way it'll eliminate a pool not being bonded, because now you have like a spider web or a grid, right? Opposed to one single line. But on the flip side, and for what you're saying, and this makes perfect sense to me, is that if you ever wanted to bring a pool up to code, or if you ever wanted to make a pool safe that didn't have bonding, that it would practically be impossible, or it would be very cost prohibitive to put in a grid in an existing pool if that's the only thing that's allowed. And by these studies and what you guys have done is showing that there's no difference truly between having the single line and the grid. And if we adopt the grid and go away with the single line, then it will practically make it impossible for most homeowners to be able to bond their pools or to make them safe. It would be cost prohibitive. Right?
It would make retrofits extremely cost prohibitive. I'm going to give you some sticker shock right now. And again, I asked a couple members, and I'll give you a number I got. This is now, guys, this is from the Fort Lauderdale area, but a deck rip out and reinstall, and will add about $30,000 to $35,000 to the cost of a renovation.
Holy crap!
In this market, from that perspective, yeah, retrofit becomes very expensive when you're talking only the one option. We'll get into details of the study here, when the study shows that both perform at what bonding is supposed to do.
Perfect. So if it's not broke, don't fix it, right?
Now how long?
In 20 years of a clean record for this system, this method without any deaths or incidents that can be tied to the bonding.
Thank you for letting me go back and answering those questions. I know it was obviously do with bonding, but a little bit off topic. But I know that a lot of our listeners are asking those questions or thinking about those types of things, because this is how it truly applies to their side.
Yeah. And those were great questions, John, by the way.
But getting back to the study and breaking it down, how was the study set up, and what types of pools did you guys test, and what exactly were you looking for?
We had some host pools that were selected and provided to us by the Pool Industry Council and their member contractors. So all these pools, there were 9 of them, were newly built, permitted, and inspected to the 2023 Florida Building Code, which is what we're on now. And none had any incidents of any shock issues. There weren't any problems at these pools to investigate. So we tested 3 concrete pools with single wire perimeter bond. We tested 3 concrete pools with a copper grid perimeter bond, and then 3 fiberglass pools that had a single wire perimeter bond. And the main objective of the test was to evaluate and compare the ability of those two different perimeter bonding methods, the single wire and the grid, to mitigate any equipotential voltage between the pool and the deck.
And those were all new pools, or were they existing pools that had those systems?
These were all newly built. So I would say the newest pool we tested was just inspected maybe a few days before we tested anything. So it was brand new. Some of the other pools were maybe a year old. So we could consider them all pretty new pools, but these were normal pools. They weren't special. They weren't in a laboratory. They were just ones that the contractors and homeowners were kind enough to give us access to.
Are there any samples, not really samples of older pools, 10 plus years old, because the copper grid really wasn't in place back then? People weren't doing that. So you don't have any studies for like older pools?
No, we didn't look at any older pools in this study.
Okay. And how did you actually simulate the electrical faults or any safety issues when it came down to electricity in the pool? What was the testing method?
Yeah, so the testing method in a nutshell
Drop
was
a toaster in the pool?
something like that. Something like that was the idea was floated, but it wasn't very scientific. So we moved on, but we looked at just the baseline measurements first. And so we were, like I said, we're measuring the difference in voltage between the pool water and the pool deck. We did it at different increments from the water's edge up to 5 feet. We looked at it with the pool running normally, no other action. And then we turned everything off and measured the equipotential voltage readings when they were off, just to give us some baselines. And then we moved on. We actually applied voltage to simulate what a stray voltage incident would do to the pool. So we actually used a device to apply voltage to the pool bonding system and energize it, which is what would occur. And then we measured the difference between the pool and the deck to see what that applied voltage, what the reaction was to the equipotential bonding grid or system's ability to mitigate that. And so we took the measurements, like I said, at various voltages and resistances.
So you do all these tests, and what did the results show when you compared the two main bonding methods?
So overall, the copper grids performed best, followed by the fiberglass pools, which had a single wire, but the water was directly bonded to that perimeter bond with a water bond plate. And then the single wire pools that were concrete were in third place. All of the tests yielded equipotential voltage values of less than 1 volt when we simulated 120 volts. Except for one pool, one of the fiberglass pools was slightly over a volt. There's some question as to whether 1 volt or 1.25 volts should be used as the threshold here. There is no specific safety voltage level written anywhere in any code. Nobody's going to tell you that this is the safe voltage and anything higher is not safe. It's because it's going to be different for everybody. The perceptible voltage level is going to be different for small children versus full-grown adults. A lot of the previous data that was tested used this 1 volt, and it's a convoluted history, but 1 volt is what we use as a threshold. But we listed this one pool as questionable because 1.25 volts could be used, and this was about 1.1, so it sat right over it. So the copper grid performed best, likely just based on virtue of the increased surface area and conductive material. You're going to have much more copper covering a greater surface area in the ground than the single wire. With the exception of that one pool, all of them performed less than 1 volt.
Yeah, and I think we can confidently say, this data is tending to show us that all the methods tested accomplish the goal of equipotential bonding at reducing those voltage potentials down to below what is commonly held as perceptible to an average human with wet skin standing on a pool deck, and showing that all methods are efficacious and methods work to accomplish what we're trying to accomplish.
So did you guys find any surprises in the data or in the testing that you weren't expecting?
With the exception of that one fiberglass pool I spoke of, everything else seemed to follow a logical trend. So there weren't really too many other surprises to speak of.
Now, let me ask you, let's talk a little bit about real world takeaways here, and how can these findings help pool builders, and inspectors, and homeowners going forward?
Yeah, so based on the scope of the testing and the variables we looked at, I would say the most important thing is to ensure that the bonding system, no matter if you use a single wire or a copper grid, and the electrical equipment are all installed properly with equipment listed for that specific use case. So I think as long as you're following what the code says and what it currently says, not what it may say in the future, I think you can safely say that the pool is bonded properly.
Okay.
Yeah, and if your listeners want to read the study for themselves, they can. They just need to visit poolbondingstudy.com. It takes you directly to the 100-page report. So it's some good nighttime reading, put you right to sleep. But it's really good information to have. So I think through a couple nights, you can get through it.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, guys, John, believe it or not, I just looked up and we've been going through this thing and we haven't taken a break from our sponsors here. Let's do this. Let's take a word from our sponsors really quick. And then when we come back, we will continue. We still have a couple more questions for you guys. We'll be right back.
Pool pros have specific needs when it comes to general liability insurance. The SPPA program has you covered. With 3 tailored and customizable general liability options, SPPA makes it easy for pool pros to feel secure. Find out more and get covered at thesppa.com. U.S. Motors Neptune Variable Speed Motor provides a versatile replacement solution for all your pool pump motor needs. This motor can communicate with pool control systems, provide low voltage options to work with time clocks, and can be installed as a standalone pump motor. The Neptune motor can be easily installed on existing pumps, upgrading them to a variable speed pump without the need for replumbing. Enjoy energy savings and quiet operation by installing a Neptune Variable Speed Motor today. For more information and to find your local distributor, visit usmotors.com/pool. Blu-ray XL is the power of minerals working for you. Reduce your overall chemical costs and labor up to 50% guaranteed. Whether you have 20 accounts or 20,000, Blu-ray XL's direct pricing and free shipping to the pool trade have you covered. Improving pool professionals' profit and work-life balance is what they do. Blu-ray XL, the real mineral purifier. Visit them at BluRayXL.com.
Blu-ray all day.
Aquastar's new pipeline cartridge filters, available in 2 sizes, deliver top-notch hydraulic efficiency along with best-in-class filtration performance, approaching that of DE filters. Uniquely designed, open pleat spacing means 100% of the media square footage is usable. And these claims are backed by NSF test results. Designed with the pro's time and comfort in mind, the patented double locking system improves safety and ease of access, making filter cleaners faster than ever before. Available now. Ask your supplier for pipeline filters today.
Natural Chemistry, a leader in specialty water care solutions for over 30 years, is proud to provide products that make pool service easier than ever before. Its unique enzyme formulations in Pro Series Pro Blend improve efficiency of your pool program while reducing frequency of filter cleaning and scum lines. Natural Chemistry is also well known for its wide variety of phosphate removal solutions that include a non-clouding formula in Phos-Free and extremely high-range removal with Pro Series Phos Remove or Phos-Free Max. Save time, save money, save work with Pro Series products. Stop sacrificing durability or efficiency with the help of Raypak's new Avia HD models that utilize NITEC, their exclusive industry-first technology. NITEC heat exchanger technology is Raypak's latest solution to superior strength and maximum efficiency when it comes to residential pool heating. With 900% more nickel compared to copper nickel in critical surfaces, NITEC creates an ideal surface to protect against scale formation and erosion without compromising on Avia's 84% thermal efficiency. Learn more at raypak.com/NITEC. The next evolution in lighting is here. Universal Color Logic 2.0 from Hayward. The latest in pool and spa lighting was designed with you in mind, making installation a breeze. Upgrades include a detachable cord and first-of-a-kind adjustable lower catch to overcome variations in plaster thickness. As always, Universal Color Logic lights retrofit into virtually any in-ground pool or spa while delivering industry-leading, vibrant color. Visit Hayward.com to discover more.
Welcome back, everybody, to the Pool Nation Live podcast. We continue our conversation with Dallas and John. And Mr. Flawless, you still doing okay over there?
Yeah, it's Dallas, John, and John.
Dallas, John. Yeah, I just kept you out of it.
Right?
Yeah.
Keep me.
You
I
know.
don't blame you.
Listen, I'm telling you, obviously this is a podcast that people can't hear, but Dallas and John, look at that beard on John Flawless, right? There's a lot of white that I'm starting to see on there, buddy. So I think your mind is starting to go, and we're seeing the signs with all the white hairs to the front of it. That should be a flag for you.
I know. I told you I'm embracing it. The Just for Men. I think it was maybe a couple months ago. I looked at it and I threw it out the window or in the trash. And no longer going to do the gray away or or any of that. I'm embracing it.
Yeah. I was talking to Dallas offline, and Dallas was just going, man, he just needs to shave. He goes, Edgar, you look so much better, nice and clean. He just needs to get rid of that beard. And I said,
he's putting words in my mouth. When I was on camera at the beginning of this, you saw I do have a beard, and I go two ways. I had either the urge to grow it out like John here, or completely shave it off. And my wife will have neither. She's like, I like it exactly the way it is. Do not change a thing. I married a man with that specific beard and none other.
Yeah, no, I go through the same struggle because I didn't have this. I always had a goatee. And when I started growing my beard out, Janie didn't like it. And then just at some point, she never said anything. But one day I was like, I'm getting sick and tired of it. I'm just going to cut it off. And she's like, no. She's like, stop. Don't do it. So now I can't. So I'm stuck with it. But I've had mornings or days where I'm like, geez, I'm just going to get rid of this thing. But she won't allow me now. So the boss overruled me.
You guys should have seen, you should have seen what John looked like when I met him. He just had this really short. And then was it this part that you always had clear, John? Was it this part right here? You didn't have any hairs right here. So he just had the little thing like that and the little lip thing that went like that. So anyways, but you know what you should do, Dallas, is do you have any little kids, Dallas?
I do. I have a 10-year-old son.
A 10-year-old son. You know what you should do is you should just put a phone in a corner, almost like a TikTok or a social, and then shave yourself and then walk out and catch his face.
See, that's the problem is my wife's line is she's like, I married a man with a beard. So I go, because I always ask the question, what'd you do if I shaved my beard? She goes, the only thing she'll tell me, leaves it ominous, is I married a man with a beard, and she leaves it at that.
Ooh, wow.
So I have to guess what's going to happen there. And I'm like, it could be on one end, she's not going to look at me for a week or two until it comes back in. The other end, I'll expect papers in the mail here.
Right.
So I don't want to roll those dice.
You don't want to roll those dice? I think it would be fun to find out. Like we could share it on social media if you want.
Look, this is an obvious question. I think a lot of us know, but it's good to hear it and to hear the proper way of answering this and realizing some of the true safety concerns behind it. But what is a risk that potential bathers or homeowners or people that use the pool or equipment risk if that pool is not bonded correctly, and what can happen to them?
John, I'll let you speak to the kind of the electrical implications of that. If there is truly like a failure or improper installation on bonding, like what are we looking at here?
Whether or not it's an improper installation or a lack of bonding, if the pool equipment and pool environment aren't bonded together, so they're at the same voltage level, then that's when you have the risk of stray voltage creating a shock incident. Sometimes that can mean some tingling or some pain, and other times it can mean death if it's great enough. It's rare, but it happens if you don't have that system in place. That stray voltage, like I said, could come from within the pool environment. It could be an improperly installed light fixture that's in contact with the pool water, or it could be something external. If there's an issue in the yard, or if there's underground equipment that may or may not be on the property, but near the property, that electricity can sometimes find its way into the pool. And having everything bonded at the same level, like I said, brings everything up in line. And so you're not going to have a problem if there is that stray voltage, as long as the bonding is there.
So what would you say is the single most important takeaway from this study for anybody in the pool industry?
I'll summarize and say is that the takeaway here is that both methods, or three if you include the water bonding as a separate method, but it's a way to get to either one with a fiberglass pool or an unconductive shell, is all methods studied are effective at reducing those voltage gradients to safe or unperceptible levels and accomplishing the goal of bonding, which is to reduce any stray voltage gradients to safe or unperceptible levels. Both methods work. Both methods are efficacious. And I think pool contractors should be able to feel comfortable installing either one on their pool projects.
One more question. Earlier you talked that it was was it the National Electrical Code that was adopting? And so what they were saying is that the way that it needed to be done was the grid form?
Grid only. No, they're taking away the single wire method, and taking away a single wire method under conductive decks. Which means they still do it. There's still an allowance if you have if a pool butts like what they call a non-walking surface. So if you had like a planter, a place where someone's not going to be walking, you could still use single wire to bond through that area. But anything under a pool deck would have to be bonded with the grid only. And one of the issues there is that Yes, the grid performs. It does what bonding is supposed to do, but single wire also does that. And the code should not, the code is a minimum standard, and a minimum standard, a code should also not discriminate against a method of construction that's effective. There is always going to be new developments, new technology. There's always going to be other ways that accomplish the same goal. Some will accomplish it in a different way, some will accomplish it with a slightly different result, but all meet the same goal. The code should not discriminate against that. So that's the position of the Florida Swimming Pool Association, that we want to see all efficacious methods available to the industry and to their consumers. And really, what construction method they use is a conversation for the contractor, the pool owner, and the engineer that are all working together to design and build this pool.
Now, did they adopt that and implement that? Did they pass that?
So that was done in what's called the tentative interim amendment. So the NEC, they have every time they release a published code, they have a process to say, well, we have a place to do an amendment between code cycles, between their version cycles. They did that as a tentative interim amendment to the 2023 NEC. And then when their next code cycle, which would be 2026, that TIA would be considered for adoption into the NEC proper. So we'd like to see them not do that, because we believe that, again, all efficacious methods should be available to contractors, engineers, and pool owners to make those decisions as long as they can meet this objective standard, which I think this study shows that single wire and grid both can meet an objective standard to mitigate voltage gradients.
So obviously it's in that interim. What makes the final decision? Is there anything? And obviously we have great people like the PHDA and you guys that are watching these things and are protecting the industry, right? Because a lot of times on the other side, we just put our heads down and we don't get to deal with this kind of stuff. So in the interim, what makes them make the final decision? And is there anything that builders, is there anything that pool pros can do to obviously go to bat and just say, hey, no?
Absolutely. So on the Florida side, we're in our code development process for our 2026 Florida Building Code. And what we're doing is we are putting language in the Florida Building Code that, regardless of what the NEC does, is going to preserve both methods as available in Florida. So regardless of what NEC does, we're working to make sure that the Florida Code says that both methods are available. So if you're in Florida, please support us in that. You can reach out to me, Dallas at FSPA.com, if you want to know how to get involved in that fight here. I'm in Florida to make sure that we push that forward. If you're in another state and you're concerned about what's happening at the NEC level, I would say definitely reach out to the National Fire Prevention Association. That's NFPA. That's the organization that writes the NEC. Their Committee 17 is what writes it. So reach out to them. Reach out to PHTA as well. PHTA has representation there, and so they will let you know how to get involved with the NFPA process. But reach out to NFPA, let them know that how you feel about this issue. That would be the best way to do it.
Okay, great. Dallas, I know that you sent me a PDF, which was great, by the way.
Yes.
Where can pool pros go to get that specific one? Do you guys have somewhere on your website that you have that PDF that you
Just
shared?
go to poolbondingstudy.com. Poolbondingstudy.com will take you right to that PDF.
That PDF. So I really suggest everybody to take a look at that PDF. A lot of great information on it. And it was really well done. If for some reason you go there, you can't find it, just reach out to me. Dallas had shared it with me. I'd be more than glad to share it with you guys out there. Guys, let me ask you anything that we have not covered with regards to this.
I think that accurately covers the study we did and the results we found.
Yeah, this is really, obviously really interesting. Something that we don't get to a lot from the service side to dig into and get a lot of knowledge on. And it's always great to be able to bring these topics and talk about them. John Flawless, let me get some final thoughts.
My final thoughts. You don't listen to me very well.
Is that your final thoughts?
That's my final thoughts. I think thoroughly enjoyed the podcast. I think this information is, like I said at the beginning in the intro, where there's a good amount of people, good people that are out there fighting for our rights and fighting to do things properly and to protect the industry so that, one, we're not overburdened with certain things, but at the same time that we're still focusing on safety and making sure that we're not creating less of a safe environment when it comes down to people that are using the pools. And one thing that struck me, that I think it was John that said this, but in the last 20 years, there hasn't been one death or there hasn't been one person that has been killed due to stray voltage from a pool that was properly bonded with the existing method that we use, correct?
That was me. And I think it's kind of a fine line because there have been electrical deaths in pools, but there's been no deaths where the bonding's been implicated. What has been implicated where we've had major electrical incidents is a failure of a primary electrical system, particularly lights. I have a bunch of the data from the CPSC, and I was going through it. They said that earlier there were 72 reported shock incidences. Out of that, there were 44 of those were fatalities. In that fatality group, I wouldn't say the majority, but the plurality was portable spas and inflatable spas. And then you also had a smattering of other non-pool equipment, sump pumps and air compressors failures. But it gets reported because it was being used in and around a pool. And then the next biggest group is lights. And I think the only time you had an incident, and it wasn't a fatal one, where bonding was even mentioned was to say that the bonding and grounding on the pool was not even grounded or bonded. For bonding to be implicated in a shock incident, you'd have to have somebody that is transversing through kind of these bonded surfaces. So from the water to the deck or grabbing a handrail or something like that, where there's going to be a potential incident there. And it's just, there is no data to support. We should use one or the other. It's not something where we've seen where there's this massive failure of bonding systems where we need to have more stringent code,
Sure. Again, like this is all really good information. Some people, sometimes they might think of this or look at this and think of it like it's boring or it might go over some of your guys' heads, but this is the real important stuff. And when it comes down to safety, it's important that we understand what we're doing and why we're doing it. And I just wanted to say thank you guys for coming on the podcast and talking about the work that you guys have done in the background for us. I look forward to seeing how it turns out and learning more about it on my end. So if you can, one more time, I know Edgar said it, but before we go, if you can give your website again where people can go and get more information on this and look at the study so that they can read up on it themselves so they can become more informed, that would be amazing.
Yeah, that's poolbondingstudy.com. It takes you right to the PDF. You can save it, print it, distribute it, do what you will with it, but poolbondingstudy.com is where you'll find that.
Absolutely. Guys, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Not John Flawless, but John, thank you so much. I know that we threw curveballs there at you at the last minute to get you to jump on the podcast, and I appreciate you making yourself available to come on. Dallas, thanks so much for reaching out. Just love it when people just reach out to us and are like, hey, we have something that we want to talk about. It's important. Can we talk about it? We really appreciate that.
And we sincerely appreciate you guys having us on. I think the Pool Industry Council is very excited to publish this study, to get the word out about this study, because it is, would say this without any doubt, that it is the most thorough study of this issue that has ever been done. And the Pool Industry Council is very proud to be able to publish this. And so we really appreciate you working with us to help get the word out and help educate the pool industry on this important issue.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Guys, thank you so much. Everybody listening, catch me and John on Wednesday on the Instagram Live. Hope that you guys have a great rest of the week. Gentlemen, we'll catch you on the next one. Bye, guys.
Later.
Bye.
Thanks a lot.
Bye.